hey, I want to do something a little different this week. So I'm going to actually share a lesson with you, a music lesson. So this is an exercise that I call Finding the Groove with One Note. So this is a exercise on how to explore music without ever changing pitches, but as a bass player, you can make the music feel totally different. You can choose different rhythms and different ways of playing the bass without ever moving notes, right? So this is actually a lesson from my course, 4-String Fundamentals. This course is out. It's available now. The link to that course is in the description if you want to learn more. And here's the lesson from 4-String Fundamentals, Finding the Groove with One Note. Well done on getting through that first section. I know that was a ton of information, and I promise this is going to get more fun because we're going to actually start to play some music. We're going to talk first, I want to talk about some rhythm stuff. So far, we've talked a lot about chords and notes and harmony. We haven't talked much about rhythm. And for a bass player, rhythm is every bit or more important than harmony, right? Because we are a part of the rhythm section. We're actually sort of the bridge between the drums and all of the harmony. We're sort of this rhythm heartbeat glue that's both playing pitches and also playing the rhythm and the heartbeat all at the same time. So we need to know a lot about timing. You need to take some time to really work on your timing. That's why the metronome that I've been talking about is so important. That's going to help you build your subdivisions. It's going to help build your internal rhythmic clock, right? So you want to practice with the metronome. You also want to practice with a drum machine or find a drum loop. And that's what we're going to do in this exercise. I'm going to put a drum loop on. And there's a lot you can learn from a drum loop. When you start to listen to drums, you're going to start to learn more things about music besides just the metronome. Because the drums can imply a lot. They can imply an attitude. They can imply a pulse. They can imply stretching the beat. They can give you information where you are within the measure. So you start to listen for things that the drummer is doing. It's going to give you information that's going to be helpful to you as a bass player, right? So for example, you're going to hear that ka, that snare drum. Typically, if you're playing like a typical rock groove, that's going to be beats 2 and beats 4. So if you know where beat 2 is and beat 4 is, you can say 2, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can work backwards, and that can determine where your 1 is, right? You can also listen to that hi-hat. That's going to give you the precision of where the subdivisions within a measure are. You can start to count along with the hi-hat, or if you find like your timing is floating, you can focus on that hi-hat and try and lock with it. And that'll help give you some precision in your playing. And the kick drum is going to tell you a lot. A lot of times the kick drums on beat 1, it might be a pulse, it might have a different accent. It depends. But you want to listen for that kick drum pattern, and you want to come up with a pattern that's going to complement it, right? Some patterns are going to work with pretty much anything, but sometimes you have a very specific kick drum pattern, and you need to come up with a specific bass line to match it. So all this stuff, it's going to start to come to you as you play more with drummers. You listen to what they're doing. So for this exercise, I'm just going to throw a simple rock beat on, and we'll see how many different ways we can come up with a bass line using one note. Okay, so let's listen to this drum groove. Okay, it's a nice, confident drum groove. Hear that thwack? 2, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So you can use the snare drum to help you tell you where 1 is if you get lost. You can listen to the hi-hat. That's the precision. That's the subdivision. That's where we're chopping this measure into pieces, is on that hi-hat. If you're having trouble locking with the drums, listen for the hi-hat and try and really focus on that. Or kick drum, boom, boom. Nice, low heartbeat of the music. It's your best friend as a bass player. You need to know where that kick drum is and what it's doing. This one is just on the downbeat of the measure, which leaves us all kinds of room. So there's a lot of freedom here. So let's start simple. We'll do the most basic thing first. Actually, the most basic thing would be not playing anything. Sometimes that's a great option as a bass player. Only play if it's necessary. But let's do a nice big whole note. It's going to last actually 2 measures. See how that feels. And what we'll do is we'll start to double that. We'll see how the feeling changes. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice and open. Okay, so let's double it so it'll be a whole note. Here we go. So we're going to double it again, and we'll do a half note. So on beats 1 and beats 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not very challenging, is it? But sometimes as a bass player, it's our obligation to play something that's not exciting for us, but that makes the music feel great for everyone else. So if that's the case, play it really confidently and just bury the timing. Like, be laser beam with your timing and play it with confidence, and it'll help make the music feel really good for everyone else and for you. It's fun to play that way. So now we've done a whole note. We've done a half note. Let's do a quarter note. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Still easy, but let's focus on making it feel great, right? So now let's cut it in half again. We'll do an 8th note. You hear that hi-hat? That's playing the 8th note, right? So let's try and lock with that. 1, 2, 1, 2, here we go. So I played that with just my index finger. That's a trick you can do. You don't always have to alternate fingers. If you just play with one finger, it'll actually sound more consistent. So listen to the difference. I'll try it with both fingers and then back to one. See if you can hear the difference. So this is both fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna switch to 1 here. Back to 2. See how the notes feel a little bit different? You can actually use that to your advantage because it kind of helps create its own groove. So you can choose 1 finger or 2 fingers depending on the effect you want to have. How about an accent? So we'll play 8th notes again, but we'll accent beats 2 and 4 with the snare. 1, 2, 1, 2, here we go. See how that sounds different too? So there's 3 different ways you can play 8th notes and have a different feeling. I think good bass playing is a lot of times just about little details, right? Little things that you can do to make the music feel different. Speaking of, so far we've played everything pretty much legato, which is a fancy way of saying long and open and smooth. But let's try shortening the notes, right? We'll make it punchier. And that's actually something as a bass player, it's really important, is how long are you going to let the note ring out? Because that's going to make the music feel totally different depending on how long that note is. So let's try the opposite. We'll do short notes, same patterns. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, whole notes. Half notes. Totally different, right? It's so cool how little changes can change the whole feeling. Now let's do quarter notes. 1, 2, here we go. punchy, right? Totally different feeling. So now we'll do eighth notes, and I'll show you a fun way to do that. You'll see it. 1, 2, 1, 2, here we go. So what I'm doing there is I'm playing an eighth note with my right hand. I'm using my left hand, where I'm taking my index finger off of that note rhythmically. And when I do that, it creates a sort of gallop feel, a little stutter. It's a cool feel, right? So it's another way of playing the groove with just one note. So far we've done everything pretty symmetrically, but then what you can do is you can start to come up with different pulses or heartbeats or irregular patterns. And if you repeat them, you can start to create cool grooves that aren't rhythmically evenly subdivided. So how about like fun stuff like that, or something a little weirder maybe. It's like a galloping 16th note, right? Because we can divide the beat even more than an 8th note. You can go to a 16th note. So what I want you to do is start to experiment with different ways of playing one note, okay? I want you to put on a drum groove, put on a metronome. I want you to practice both with drums and with a metronome because you'll learn different things, right? And I want you to experiment with different ways of playing one note, experiment with different rhythms. I want you to count along. The whole time I'm playing bass, usually the internal monologue in my head is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. It's your responsibility as a bass player to always know where one is, always know where the beat is. And, you know, not every bass player agrees about this. Not everybody counts all the time. I don't do it all the time, but for a while I always did. Every measure I was counting in my head, and I learned a lot from doing that. And you'll start to feel it where you don't always have to count, but I would encourage you to practice counting out loud and in your head. Practice playing with a metronome and with drums. I want you to practice your subdivision, practice your duration of your notes, how long you let them ring out, practice playing them with intensity, and then also coming up with your own rhythmic patterns. Experiment with different rhythms. Another thing that we didn't talk about is ghost notes, and that's where you can play a note without playing a pitch, right? Where you can mute, you can add these little rhythmic moments. Let me put the drums back on. You can see how that feels. So let me try some ghost notes. You can kind of create these stutter effects where you bounce off the strings. So you can practice that. Practice your ghost notes just by muting. Just playing bass without playing a note. And then you can practice like a note and then a mute. You start to come up with patterns that way, right? So ghost notes too. So there's so many different ways you can play the same note over the same groove. So it's really exciting. You can start to unlock all these different ideas that way. And we haven't even moved. We haven't even tried any other notes. So there's so many options out there. There's so many things to explore. Start with just one note and see what all you can come up with. So that lesson was one of many. I have a few hours worth of lessons in this course. That one was kind of in the middle, but there's some more basic ones and all the way through to some more advanced material as well. So no matter where you're at, I think it will be a course that will have value for you. And it's also a way that you can help out the channel. So check it out. And otherwise, I'll see you next week in the next video. Thanks.